and enjoyed our lunch here. Well, this afternoon's sessions in this parallel room 1 here, we will be discussing under the topic of e-government guidelines and best practices for developing country, which will be conducted by Ms.Jantima Sirisaengtaksin, ex-CIO Revenue Department. So please welcome her on the stage. And along with all of our Thai speakers as well, and varieties of speakers will come up here, starting from first, Dr.sak, segkhoonthod, President and CEO, E-Government Agency EGA Thailand. Mr. James Kang, Country CIO, IDA Singapore. Mr. William Edward, ex-member of E-Envoy and Electronic Government Agency from the UK. And lastly is Mr. Ivar Tallo, member of the Management Board, E-Government Academy from Estonia.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. After you have a very good lunch, I think we have a very good section in the afternoon. So you don't feel after have a feel sleeping. No problem. If you feel sleeping, you just come walk and sit in front. You know. But we have a very interesting topic in this afternoon. We talk about the guideline and the best practice. So I would like to give all the speaker about 15 to 20 or 25 minutes because we have a long section. But we have a very good case for you and very interesting. The good practice, we know that our neighbor or in ASEAN, we have a very popular country to be the top 10 of the world all the time, or top 3 now. Is now may I introduce the first speaker, Mr. James Kang. Is a CIO, country CIO of the Singapore. Please give your good afternoon section, please.
Thank you. Sawadika. Did I say it rightly? Okay, it's a real privilege to be here, and greetings from Singapore. Okay, I'll go through quite quickly because, the moderator asked me to maybe show one case example of one stop since Professor Obi said we did a couple of these quite well in Singapore. Well, I start off with the world today. As you know, it's a turbulent world. Philippines just got attacked maybe a month ago, and then Australia followed. And 3 weeks ago, Singapore came under attack. So, we are in a really very different world. And natural disaster, look at Haiyan in Philippines. But the good news is also that this is also an exciting world. A lot of opportunities. Thanks to internet, we are all connected. And technology has become so pervasive and so powerful. So, while there are warnings and challenges, there's also very exciting opportunities. So a quick look, I think Singapore, the e-government went a long way, started in 1980s, simply just to computerize all agencies. And then we start to, move everything to E. If you want to open a counter, you have to go to the head of civil service to explain why. Is it on? Yeah, okay, you have to explain why. So as a result, we have almost 2,000 government services that went E. So you don't have to go all the way to a counter. And the previous master plan was about integration because, the citizen don't want to go to 10 places or 3 places. Government, you get your act together, I come to one place, that's the one stop, you handle the rest for me. And the last one which we did, the current one, which is under 2015, is a collaborative government. Now this is a very different master plan from the rest. You know why? Because the past 3 master plans talks about technology, right? Computerization, integration, e-services. This one talks about collaboration. Does technology collaborate? No, human beings collaborate. So as the previous head of civil service told me, he said, this is the most difficult master plan because you are no longer talking about technology, you are talking about people. Mindset change, new culture, that's very difficult to do. And he's right. So there are 3 major thrusts. First one is co-creating. connecting and then catalyzing. Now, co-creating. I think government will continue to introduce new innovative services, and you will do it in different way. This is the old e-citizen portal, where one goes and you can access to all government information as well as e-services. But it's very government-centric. Actually, it's organized by how government is organized. Defense, education, trade, and so on and so forth. But as you know, nowadays people use Google. It should be like this, clustered free, just use Google to search for the topics you want. Make it as user-friendly as possible. Don't write policy paper and put it there. Just tell them if you want to get a license, how to get it, that's all. Use infographics, People have many schemes, like the poor. The best way is to show a graph. This is all you get, this is yes, this is no. And picture paints 1,000 words, but a video paints 1,000 pictures. So instead of writing 20 lines how to do it, just put a half a minute video, like YouTube. That's the best. Consolidate all inbox into one, so that you don't have to receive from all over the place. There's a safe place, especially if you receive fines, there's a place you can act upon before it's compounded. And even on the business side, it's the same. These are all the one-stop service. Actually, it was mentioned. TradeNet, as you know, we started way, way early, 1989. Just remove paper out of the loop. So instead of 3-4 days, it becomes 3 minutes. CORNET is for those in the building and construction. All the e-services are all there. Business is for people who set up companies and businesses. You won't believe it, at one time it can cost up to over 30,000 just to open a business, depending on what kind of license you need and so on. Now everything is below 300. And of course, Frontier, or what we know as a OL, what I call one-stop licensing portal. All kinds of licenses you need is all one-stop. And to make it simple, we make use of e-advisor. So, the simplicity, make it simple, make it fast, make it cost-effective. Just tell us what kind of business you do, and then straight away, they will tell you what kind of licenses you need. So all in all, really, we are making what we call citizen-centric. Put the citizen in the center, and whatever he needs, whether it's information, his e-services, notification, alerts, his records, he has 360 view of it. The other way is of developing services is through co-creation, and then that's where we follow the Apple example. Set up the platform, and suddenly Apple has 1 million applications. How can a company produce 1 million applications? So the power of platform is actually available to government. So that's where open data and all this comes in. Release the data, put it on a platform, and you'll be surprised the kind of innovation that the public can develop. And government don't have a monopoly of all the good ideas. Believe me, the private sector and the citizens, many times they know they are smarter than the government. So some of these are applications that's created by the citizens, the public. So one of them is a park's life. I just show you, it's just a virtual reality. So if you go to a park and then you point, you can see the direction and all the attractions that's in it. It's good to have, but if you are looking for the toilet, this is a must-have, because they'll help you decide the bush or the toilet is the one to go. And if you finish it, well, you can even rate the toilet. All these are, imagine the kind of creative juices that the citizens can give us. And I think moving forward, we are really looking at a new normal. Citizens who want a say, For many years, the Singapore government has been very hard-headed. Their thinking is as long as there's prosperity, citizens will take hard decisions. Not anymore. The last election was a real setback. Money is not good enough. We want to be loved. So I want to have a say. I want to see that you care for me. My voice is heard. I think all over the world is happening, right? And they are very forgiving if you are not. So you really have to engage the crowd. And it's good for government, like crowdsourcing. Why does the library think of what books they have to buy, Just ask the crowd who borrows them. They'll tell you what books to buy. So crowdsourcing, the police have caught criminals working with the public on crowdsourcing. So there are many apps that came out because of that. Of course, finally, we have to be prepared, catalyzing. And because it's citizen-centric, we need to put what we call user experience design. I tell you, Apple is one good example of user experience design. Do you know how much money they put in just to look at, if you use a notebook, when you scroll down the bar, what happens? It moves up, right? But on a tablet, when you scroll down, it moves down. Hey, that is a breakthrough. That's why even babies can use iPad. It's because our user experience design is very, very important. So in Singapore, we make compulsory, all agencies, before they launch anything, go through user experience design. Agile, the world moves too fast. We can't wait for 12 months to put out application. You better put up something in 2-3 months. And the way to go is Agile. Well, if you don't Agile, you can check it out, like Scrum and all that. A lot of interaction, a lot of user partnership, but you roll out in 2 months, 3 months, and then you iterate. And then after 2-3 months, you put more things. It helps you to prioritize, help you to validate, actually remove a lot of risk. But it's a cultural change. Government is not equipped to do Agile. So that's where the challenge is. But this is really needed for government to move forward. Cloud. When H1N1 hit Singapore, Ministry of Health website went down. Of course, everybody go there and check what's the problem. So I had to run around and rob agencies of servers just to beef up the thing. I beef up 400%, it went down again. I have to beef up 1,000% before it withstand the shock. But with cloud, I can do it in 10 minutes. If I buy server, it's 6 weeks, as you know, if those of you are in the server procurement. So cloud, same way, as much as Agile moves application, the cloud will move infrastructure. You can't wait 6 weeks when H1N1 hits. Recently was the haze. Wow, because of the cloud, Zoom, 1,000%. Somehow we have CDN. So it never went down. And moving forward, everything is real time. Sensors are everywhere. Today, telco knows I'm in Bangkok because I carry this. But if we can tap on this metadata, it will be enormous. So what we are trying to do in Singapore, everyone with a phone, we want to know all the movements, depersonalize, anonymize. But this will help us plan future transport, for example. A to B. Do you think a train or bus, taxis, personal private car, driverless car, underground, above ground? Well, that's the future, and in crisis management, this will be extremely useful. Believe me, this is coming big time. And to really move forward with all this data, data is exploding by the minute. And if you can capitalize on this, I think that's the way to move forward smartly. That's why a lot of people call it smart. Actually, smart and fast, these two together has to come in. So I think this is all I have on some of the major pieces. Of course, that's not all. I think Professor Obi was talking about PCs proliferating everywhere and all that. Well, we have a program called Standard Operating Environment, where the whole government, from network down all the way, PCs, notebooks, email, identity, all standardized. It reaped a lot of benefit to government because the recent attack, we have a 360 view of all the government agencies. Once the hackers succeed, within 15 minutes we take it out. We can patch 90,000 workstations within an hour. So these are all very good because we locked down the computers and all that. The security went very high. Of course, it's a very unpopular project. So if any country going to this way, talk to us first. We'll tell you the mistakes we make and the benefits we got, So while we are planning for the second generation, we learn what to centralize and what not to centralize. But believe me, this is the way to go. If you want to contain cyber attacks, you have to centralize a lot of things. And when they attack, without that overview, 360 overview, we'll be killed on 5th of November. But because of this, we can withstand, fortunately, with minor injury. Okay, so I just give a case study of, the one-stop. Look at these 3 birds. The first one is a pigeon. You know who is in charge of the pigeons? Well, it's a health hazard because the droppings are very toxic. So the veterinary department looks after that. Crow. Crow is a nuisance. They can attack people, so be careful of crows. And who is in charge? It's the Ministry of Environment. They cull it, they'll shoot it. What's the third one? Happy bird, angry bird. Well, some Finnish youths are in charge and they are very rich, okay? Now the problem is the fourth one. It's called a miner. It's a very smart bird. This is the bird that every morning will poo on my car. And I call, that's why I know who is in charge of what. Because I call this one, they say, no, it's not a pigeon, I'm not responsible. If it's not a crow, I'm not responsible. So in the end, what do? I think of ways how to get rid of this bird, but I can't. If I use a catapult, if I get caught, the CIO of Singapore is using dangerous weapon and so on. So after 4 years, I shifted house because of this bird. This terrible bird. So that's the problem. And that's not all. Animals, monkey, if he get killed on the road, it's a road transport problem. If he fell into the rain, it's public utilities. If he get killed in the jungle, it's a national park. So how is the public going to know who to complain to? And this is just animals and all that. So recently, about a year or two ago, we say, okay, all animals, birds, whatever you call it, 2 legs, 3 legs, 4 legs, wings, in the airspace and the land of Singapore, environment, you take charge. That's easy to do, right? Just appoint an agency, mandate it. Until recently, this guy came. So on our rivers, we have crocodiles. Hey, it's not a bird, it's not an animal, it's a reptile. It's not on the land, not on the air, it's on seas. So I'm just saying that things move very fast. So you can put out all kinds of rules and all that. So what happened is, we want to make it a one-stop. So we classify 4 big areas, which is animals, birds, nuisance, noise. Third one is, of course, cleanliness. People throw litter, throw their furniture, and so on. Of course, the fourth one will be housing and infrastructure. But one night, if your neighbor's dog barks and keep you awake, who are you going to call? It's an animal, right? It's also noise. So I'm trying to tell you, it's very, very difficult. That's why in the system, what we do is, we'll have one stop, but we have to employ really advanced technology so that the technology will learn along the way. We have to put a team of people, high-powered people, who will assign responsibility to the agencies. So as the month passes, there will be many great things that come. But then, if the system can handle most of it, the other part of it, you need human intervention and you need leadership to assign responsibility to agency. That's how it works. So this is in development. This is an example of a one-stop, but without a central, strong directive. The war is over before you start. So that's why it's very difficult to always do this kind of a whole government effort where there's integration, there's collaboration. Without a central, strong leadership, that's almost impossible to start anything. Right? Thank you very much.
So this is a good example. So we need to do one-stop service when we have something. Which number we should be called, 111 or 191? So what happened in Singapore? Which number you have to one-stop service? Next is we have a guest speaker from the British is Mr. William Edward. He is E-Ggoverment of the England. Developed one of original to develop very popular in that time. So it's an example for every country to learn. Please share your experience.
Thank you very much indeed. Just get the technology working first. No.
Normally, this is normal for the technology.
Are we there? Can't see the screen. Some nodding heads if we're on the screen. Excellent. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak. It's a pleasure to come after Mr. Kang here. And everything I say, I think, is going to fit with what he was just just telling you now, because I certainly agree with everything that he's said. This is what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where I come from. Then I'm going to tell you why this is about the customer. And the customer is made up of the people that you serve. I'll talk a little bit about trends in government IT, and then what you have to do to make change happen, because making change happen is very, very difficult. If you only take one thing away today, just one thing, then let it be this, and it is focus on the business and not on the technology. And I will talk a little bit more about that as we go on. A little bit about me. I used to work for the UK government. I was one of the senior team working for Tony Blair when he was Prime Minister from 2000 to the end of 2004. He was Prime Minister longer than I was there. And we did a great deal in the time, and we learned a lot. And maybe, some of the most valuable stuff we learned was from the mistakes that we did. So we've got a long list of things that you shouldn't do, as well as things that we think that you should do. Actually, most of that senior team left and set up a consultancy business at the end of our term there. And since then, I've worked with a number of governments around the world, and we just added up, it's actually 43 countries that we've worked for, and we just added up how many people's lives we touched through those. And we came up with two measures. So if you're a government person and you're very cautious, then you come up with a cautious measure. And where we've got absolute proof that the work that we've done with governments has had an impact on citizens' lives, it comes to 82.8 billion people. I think that's not bad in 9 years. But if we're actually a little bit less careful about that, if I put my businessman's hat on, then I'll be saying to you, no, it's 1.8 billion, because that's a slightly less defensible measure. But both of those numbers are pretty good, I think. And over the years, what we've done is we've built a set of tools and methodologies based on all of the experience that we've gathered, originally in the UK and then in other governments, and we've put those in a set of white papers. You can read them on our website. They're there to download for free. And in there, there's tools and processes and methodologies, and they were picked up by the International Standards Organization, OASIS, a couple of years ago. And OASIS asked us if we would donate some of that material to them to enable them to build an international standard for how you transform government, how you transform a government into an IT-enabled government. And we did that, and what you can see on that little chart there is a journey going round clockwise from our white papers through. That first little arrow thing is our methodology, and finally the OASIS methodology at the end. And so we're very pleased with that, and we absolutely recommend looking at the OASIS methodology. It's all free to access, it's free to use, and you can download it from their website. And we're currently doing, if you like, a smart city version of that standard for the UK government. So the UK government has employed us to build its guidance for cities in the UK. And that guidance is out in draft at the moment, so you can look at that. And that's also getting international interest. Amazingly from Australia, who are very interested in that. Okay, so let me start by saying, let me talk about my first little topic here, and it's why this is about the customer. So if you're a public servant, then you're there to serve the public. And government is a service delivery machine. I mean, there's a tiny bit of government that's about, deciding whether the government's going to go to war, but the rest of it is all about service delivery, whether it's education or it's health or it's immigration or whatever it is. Government is a big service delivery machine, and it's the biggest service delivery machine in any country. But traditionally, governments are exceptionally bad at responding to customer needs. What they do is they decide internally, and I'll say we, because I was in government all of my working life virtually till I left and went into consultancy, and even now all I do is government, so I've always worked in government. We're really bad at it. What we do is we decide in little rooms what the service is going to be, and we push it out to the customer. But one of the reasons I say, you know, I agree with Mr. Kang is because those days are gone. You know, you might still be able to get away with that, but your time will soon be up. And I'm working in Zambia at the moment for the Zambian government, and I'd have thought, would there be customer service pressure in Zambia? And absolutely there is, because the government of Zambia got elected on a promise to improve services from the government to citizens. So this is a big deal all over the world, and connectivity and social media and all of this is just changing people's expectations. So let me tell you about this chap here. Everybody recognize this gentleman here? Mr. Steve Jobs, you know, the late Mr. Jobs, a pretty successful businessman, I should say, changed the world, really. Devices here, lots of Apple devices in this room, I wouldn't wonder. Microsoft is a client of mine, so, you know, there you go. What Steve Jobs said is, one of the things I've always found is that and this is this is a transcript of what he said, so hence the word, you've got to start with the customer experience and work backwards to the technology. You can't start with the technology and try to figure out where you're going and then try and sell it. And I've made this mistake probably more than anybody else in this room, and he's got the scar tissue to prove it. So he was being very upfront, and I actually saw him give this presentation. I have to be honest and say I saw it on YouTube. I wasn't in the room. But, you know, it's a good presentation. And, you know, it's a good mantra. Look what he's done. You know, he turned Apple from a failing company into the most valuable company in the world. And one of the things that he did was launch this product here. Yeah, iPad on the table here. How many iPads in the room? Hands up. iPad owners? Yeah, quite a few around there, aren't there? Yeah. So this is a good product, isn't it? This is a really good product. It works. It delivers. And you know. Do you think that Apple invented the tablet computer, this portable tablet computer, because that's what an iPad is? Would you be surprised if I told you that actually Apple didn't invent this, didn't invent the idea of a consumer tablet computer that you walked around with all day? In fact, back in 2002, when I did work for the UK government, I had to chair a meeting. And this was a meeting of very important people, like everybody in this room today, very important people all sitting around a table from the UK government. I had a minister on one side of me and somebody from an IT company on the other side of me. And he showed a new product that they were just about to launch. And he said, this is going to revolutionize computing. And he was just, you know, so enthusiastic about it. And that gentleman was Bill Gates. Now, what about that? So actually, back in 2002, Microsoft launched the tablet computer. I mean, they launched the concept and the operating system. Obviously, other people made the hardware. But who'd have thought that actually it was Bill Gates and Microsoft and not Mr. Steve Jobs? And then a couple of years later, there's Mr. Balmer, from you know, a couple of years after Jobs launched his product with Microsoft's copy of the iPad, if you like. So here's the difference. What happened here? And what happened was that the product that Bill Gates is holding there is a laptop with a touch screen on it and no keyboard. That's what he's holding. And it does everything that a laptop does, and it has all the limitations of a laptop. It's heavy. It's a bit clunky, the battery lasts for 20 minutes, all of those things. What Steve Jobs did was go out to the marketplace and understand what customers wanted. And so the product that he's holding does far, far less than the product that Bill Gates does in terms of technology, in terms of computing power. But from a customer perspective, it gives them what they want. It lasts all day, it's very easy to use, it's quick, it just works, it's lightweight, you can carry it around, all of those things, it's no less unaffordable. It's still as expensive as the other one, but you're actually paying more for less, if you like, or the same money for less computing power, but you're getting it in a stylish package and it does the things the customers want. And that, I think, is the difference. The difference is that what Bill Gates is holding in his hand is something that is a piece of technology that's taking forward the, it's kind of a development of a piece of technology that already existed. What Steve Jobs is doing there is he's holding something that is what his customers told him he wanted to get. Now, I don't want to be, I said that Microsoft is a client, and I don't want to be unfair to Microsoft, and I'm absolutely certain that they will have done all of their customer research on that. But, this is a sort of light-hearted way of making the point that what, from a producer point of view, and so from your point of view, might seem to be a very small change, from a customer point of view can be a massive change. And the idea of user interface design and all of that kind of stuff is what helps you get that right. And so if your business and your business has customers, you can only be successful if you give them what they want. And inside the smart city framework, so this new standard for how cities operate and deliver their services in the UK, there's something called the Citizen Empowerment Framework. So there's a great deal of emphasis on putting the needs of citizens at the heart of this. And when we did this in the UK at central government, back in, 2003, I think it was, that's the impact that we got. So on that graph there, the blue line is the take-up of services, the engagement with government services online. The amber line there is the step change from sweeping away the past and putting in place new services that were built around what the customers had told us, not what we thought they needed inside government. And that really was at the beginning of a change in the way governments have started thinking about service delivery. And we say that that's really the change from e-government to transformational government. And where we are now is governments and these standards are talking about not just putting technology into government, but doing the things that you need to do to the business of government to make this happen. And some of these things are a shift from being government-centric to citizen-centric, solving the problem of the unconnected vertical business silos inside government. So you're never going to make one government. The business of government is too broad for that. But what the OASIS standard and what the Smart City standard says is that you need a virtual business layer, a new virtual business layer built around citizens' need, overlaid across the existing government infrastructure in order to be able to get this right. And in a big government like Thailand, you've got a lot of government in Thailand because you're a big country. It's a big problem, and that's the sort of thing that the standard recommends to help you solve that problem. Other things, our identity is owned and managed by government at the moment. In a transformed government, then that's something that you think about giving to your citizen. Public data locked away in government, changing that, making public data available, stopping to think about citizens as just the recipient of services, but thinking of them as co-owners. And something that's very important, and that is, there's a shift in the way IT is being delivered. I mean, this is probably the biggest change in the way IT is being delivered since the beginning of IT, and that is the shift to cloud computing. So the move away from IT being a purchase to a service, in the same way that getting water out of your tap is a service. And a move away from being producer-led, that example that I just gave with the laptops, to being brand-led. And brand-led is not about logos, it's about what a product really is. And then I think you can kind of summarize all of those points by saying This is a move away from thinking about bolting technology onto the existing business model of government to one where you focus first on the business model changes needed to unlock the benefits to citizens, and only after you've done that on the technology. So, transformational government framework, the standard, the global standard that's out there for you. What is it? It is a managed process of ICT-enabled change in the public sector, which puts the needs of citizens and businesses at the heart of that process, and which achieves significant transformational impacts on the efficiency and effectiveness of government. And a number of governments around the world are already using the principles and the tools and the techniques from the transformational government framework. And the latest government to adopt that, as we're talking about developing countries here, is the government in Zambia. But the tools and processes in here are not limited to any particular type of government. They're applicable to governments at any stages of development. And some of the features of this are that the TGF draws on the practical experience of governments around the world. This has not been put together by a set of people just sitting in a room. And it provides a whole host of benefits. So these, happy to let you have copies of these slides, but as we're short of time, I won't run through all of these. And then that's what it looks like. And inside this chart is a top-level representation of all of the things that you need to do in order to maximize the benefit of ICT inside government. So it deals with customers, it deals with stakeholders, it deals with technology, it deals with child delivery, all of those things. So I'd just like to finish by dealing with that big problem, which is how do you make change happen inside government? And particularly this idea in the TGF that you should have a virtual business layer across government. Government looks like this. It's lots of organizations, all different shapes of sizes, and they're all full of people. And inside each of those organizations, they all have their own hierarchies. And if you're trying to run change across government, there's somebody in the centre, maybe in the Prime Minister's department, maybe in the Ministry of ICT, wherever, and they're trying to run this change programme. And they have these little lines stretching outwards to the other parts of government. That's all simple and straightforward, isn't it? But actually it's not like that at all, is it? It's like that. There are a million connections and relationships across government. It's very complicated. Most of the levers that you have are made out of rubber, so people don't do what you want them to do. And of course, there's this great thing inside government where, somebody comes into the centre with a new initiative, and all of the people around in the government ministries think, well, maybe they're not going to be there for very long. I'll just sit tight, and they'll be gone. And I've seen that happen. I've done it myself. I've been there. So you just, what you've got to do is you've got to get all of these people involved so that the whole of government's driving it forward. And part of that means being able to get a view. I mean, again, Mr. Kang talked about this, a view of what's happening across government. And that view needs to cover all of the important things that need to take place in a change process. I haven't got time to go through them now, but one of the things that we've done is build a software product that helps do that. And that deals with things, are we on there? Yes. That deals with, key things like, the obvious thing of program management and looking after your budget. But the other things, the softer things like skills and competencies of the people. Because it's people that make things happen inside government. And if you put a person with one set of skills in a job, they'll do what they're good at. If you change that person and put somebody else in that job with a different set of skills, they'll change the job. They'll push it in a different direction. So the trick is to make sure you're managing the skills and competencies. And the military, very good at this sort of thing. Very, very good indeed. Lots of training, lots of... you don't put somebody in a tank if they can't drive it. Stakeholder management, very important, to get get your stakeholders involved. And then all of these things are our customer insights we've talked about, the importance of customers, performance metrics. I remember sitting in a meeting, an OECD meeting once, it was a cross-government meeting, multi-international meeting, and it was all about how to develop the business case for e-government. And a guy from, I think it was one of the Scandinavian countries, said, look, let's be honest, we usually write the business case afterwards to fit what we've done. So, but you can't drive change across government if you do it like that, because you just finish up with whatever you finish up and you say, oh, that was maybe what we meant to do. You've got to be able to build that business case at the beginning and measure how you're going as you go through it. And then finally, what you need is external validation. Because this happened to me when I was in the UK government. I had to have external validation, and at first I thought this was just an intrusion into my world. I didn't want it. But in the end, I saw the light, and so I'm a great evangelist for getting people in who are not part of your organisation, whether they're other government people or they're external consultants, and get them to validate what you're doing. So just to finish off, you need a roadmap. You need a plan for what you're doing. You need to be able to say, today we're here, tomorrow we're going to be there, the next day there, and our journey will end there. And so you need to know what you need to do. You need to know when you need to do it. You need to know what you need to do before taking the next step. So many of these programs fail because people, they do something and they don't anticipate what the consequence of that will be, and then it all goes wrong. Focusing on early wins is a critical thing as well. You've got to be able to show success as you go, and then, as I've just said, getting external validation. And my final point, which was my first point, was focus on the business, not the technology. So I'm very sorry that it was a bit rushed at the end there, but I think I've just about kept inside my envelope. So thank you very much indeed for being a good audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the idea. Nowadays, we don't talk about the technology. We have to talk about the human being. And our service is more concentrated to the citizen-centric, the requirement from the user, not from the technique side. Yep, right. So the next is a very good experience from the Estonia. Mr. Ivar Tallo, Member of Management Board, E-Government Academy. Please. You give. Yes. We always heard the story from the newspaper of the Estonia, so we share your experience. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and Satikrap. Thank you for inviting me here and providing me with this opportunity to speak about a very small country, but I believe quite interesting. And we already have some exchange of experience. Your foreign minister came to Estonia in September, and as a consequence, I'm coming here now. But what are we talking about? Estonia, Nordic neighborhood. We have already snow falling nowadays. The population is 1.3 million, so very, very small indeed. The area is not that small. It's 45,000 square kilometers. We are members of European Union and NATO. And the building of e-government was kind of a way from the Soviet Union to the European Union. And according to these all international measurements, we are not doing too well. We are on something like 26th place usually, but we don't care that much. I think we have done most of the things that top 3-5 countries are talking about. It is just that the measurements measure different things. So what do we have in Estonia? We have the internet penetration rate, 78%. This is average in Europe. It's a nice measure, but it basically means that people are using internet. And what is interesting, under those of 35, 98% of people are using internet daily. But what I'm going to speak about is how to build kind of a fully functional e-government infrastructure, what it is. This is kind of a guideline to countries that are still looking way forward. We have completed it some 8 years ago. We have therefore experience of complex e-services provision. That means that our people are using electronic services already for quite some time. For example, 95% of the tax returns are processed electronically, and we have also very few countries that have it, but we have electronic voting since the elections from 2005. And we have also not only good experience, we have rather unfortunate experience also. Namely, we had the first ever cyber riots in 2007, or some people say cyber war. But most people, of course, never heard of Estonia in the wider world, but they heard about Skype, which originates in Estonia. But let me start from this e-government infrastructure. So what it is really that is needed to have this kind of electronic services provision. And it is kind of 4 pillars. First, you have to ensure the access in 2 senses. First, of course, the citizens, and we heard in the morning session how it is done now, and the stress is made in Indonesia and so on. It's very good. And then there is an access in terms of also connecting all offices, not only the central government offices, everybody has done it, but also the smallest offices in the countryside, the local governments. If this access question is solved, then parallel to that one, the country has to build the digitalized information systems. I mean, basically everybody is collecting information today in digitalized form. But this kind of digital information should be ordered sort of logically. You have to kind of map digitally all people, so it's a population registry, all businesses, so it's a business registry, all property, so it's a property and land registry, and then economic activities, and then, well, other things coming up also on top of it. But based on these digital information systems and registries, you want to have them communicate with each other. If they communicate, so that is called this integrated back office, then you can already have meaningful use of these information resources or digital resources. We in Estonia developed and started in 2003 something what we call an X-road. It's a connection of all government databases by data exchange layer. And it's actually, we started with the government, but now also the private sector has been allowed to join if they have business with government. But now these are very complex systems, and one of the things what we heard now from William Edward was that, okay, we have to plan ahead all that very sort of meticulously because it's so complex. I think our experience is that if you plan ahead too much, then you spend the resources on planning. We rather do things first, and so we were using what later is now called an open method of planning, really, because of the complexity. How to manage the complexity, you do it actually by going step by step. And if the prototype kind of, you have to have a vision, sure. But when you get the prototype working, you already declare the victory and then you develop it further. Otherwise, political support will not last that long as necessary. So, and the final kind of pillar for this e-government infrastructure is electronic identity. I'm very happy to see that Thailand has taken this road. And I think actually we are still, in the world at large, we are underestimating, unfortunately, the necessity and the importance of electronic or digital identity by people. Namely, I think that as in the traditional world, control over territory and legitimate use of violence was what kind of defined the government as such. Then in 21st century government, sort of the root provision of identity, or this what in IT world is called a trusted third party, is a role of government, one of the key roles, because governments can contract out almost anything, but they don't. I've never seen a country in the world where they contract out telling who is a citizen, or decision who is a citizen and who is not. So that being the kind of basis for the identity. So if you have these 4 pillars in place, what you get basically a government country where you can put the E or M or X in front of all functions of the state. And what it really means is just that all these ministries, local governments, parliaments, schools, health care providers, they are connected to each other. They communicate, they are able to communicate with each other and do it in a secure way. Of course, for that, again, coming back to the question of digital identity, you need a way to distribute it to people. What we did in Estonia, we distributed to all population the digital ID cards, or ID cards with electronic identity. We started to do that in 2002. And basically nowadays every adult in Estonia has this card. And last year we had over 100 million digital signatures given by the cards already. And actively it is used by over half of the population. So over half of the population are using electronic services. And what is also interesting maybe to mention that today we are more and more seeing, and we are using since 2007 in Estonia also mobile identity, meaning that we have the same digital certificates for authentication and for digital signature also on our mobile SIM cards. And it is much cheaper than to distribute the identity, and you don't need card readers, etc. Well, it is a decision, of course, of national governments which way to choose. Now, when we look back of Estonian development, sort of, we started, we stood in year 2000 with electronic tax board. We launched mobile parking in 2000. We started, well, the first digital signature was exchanged by mayors of our 2 major cities, Tallinn and Tartu, in 2002. E-voting introduced 2005, e-police 2007. You know, we don't have, for example, a requirement for people to carry the driver's license or the car papers or the insurance papers anymore, because police can access all the data 24/7. So we changed the law and said, okay, if police can do it, check people anyway, so why do we demand that people carry these documents? So we got rid of them. We actually got rid of all the papers. We have changed in 2006 a public procedural law which says how the government functions, and the change is that if government holds information about you, it should not ask you to prove it. So we don't have the paper documents to carry around. The officials have to take it from the departments where these databases are, or where this data is located. Also, what we introduced in 2000 was electronic cabinet office. So this is actual, on the left you see the picture from 2000, now it's a little bit more modern and fashionable. But we got rid of the papers in the Cabinet of Ministers meeting in 2000. Nobody did it, everybody said you're crazy back then, but it has lasted, everybody likes it. All the new ministers who came in, well, they go through the training and then they use it, and then they are not bound to be exactly in one place. So if you look at it in more schematic way, initially what you do is you add the technology to sort of communication for the official, and nothing really much changes for the citizen. Then what we saw last decade, it was this one-stop shop approach that you could go to one official, and this official did everything. In Estonia, we already in 1990 thought of something else. We didn't really take this one-stop shop approach. We thought that people should communicate directly from their own PCs with the government, and they create their own environment where they want to and on what topics they want to communicate with government. So it is without the civil servants in between. The civil servants have, they don't disappear, so don't be afraid that you will lose the job. It is just that you'll have more meaningful jobs than just pushing papers from one stack to another. And what you see is, for example, we have company registration. Sort of informal record is 18 minutes. I don't know why you want to do it in 18 minutes, actually. If it's a serious thing, so usually it takes you an hour or two, but it shouldn't take more. And now practically all companies are registered online. And how we did it, it is, it has been, we heard it from the Singapore case, we heard it from UK, we hear it everywhere, this talk about the change management. We actually think that the change management is really the key. Also, in looking back at our experience, you can buy technology, or in our case, we were rather a poor country. We didn't buy that much technology, but we were nevertheless successful. So it wasn't the technology, it was the use of technology, the change how we refashioned the business processes. How we simplified many things, and that allowed us to actually achieve what we are very proud of doing. So, but it doesn't, it isn't overnight. I mean, there is no killer application really in e-government. Here you have a sort of scheme from 2000 to 2010. You see, it takes like 10 years to become really successful. I mean, now, yes, all the taxes are paid online, but 10 years, it's usually sort of political life cycle is 4 years from one election to another. So it takes more than 2 to be really that successful. Another quite interesting example, we have this parental leave benefit claim, and where you had to prove before with papers that, okay, your child was born, your employer paid you this much salary, the tax office got this much social security benefit, etc. All these different data requests. Now you don't have to do anything because sort of when you log in into this information system and identify yourself and say that you want to get a child benefit, all this data will, because it is already gathered by the government, will come automatically. So the only thing you have to do really is to type in your bank account number where you want the money to be transferred, and that takes you up and review the application, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3, that's all. That is a chart of how the internet introduction of internet voting went. Initially, just 2%. The politician said, "Oh, 2%, it's not interesting." Next elections 2 years later, the 5%. Oh, not interesting. I mean, it's just for sort of fun. And then all of a sudden it was 15, 16%. And politicians said, that's votes. And now that it is quarter of the votes, it's actually, politicians are first time getting worried about it a little bit. But the main argument, many people ask us, how can you trust your votes to the electronic system? And we are saying, what's the problem? I mean, we've been trusting our money to the electronic system already for more than 10 years. Why not the votes? So just to sum up, what are these kind of driving forces? First, I concur with what we've heard before. It is exactly Estonian example, also proving leadership and political will. Then what we would we hold there is that there are some fixed political, infopolitical principles. I mean, you can't foresee the future. I remember when I was creating this e-Estonia policy, I was asked to do it in 1996. Then I was looking at the international experience at that time. I saw even Malaysia already drawing plans for 2020, and I remember that I was saying, well, I can't be planning ahead so long. So let's just agree on some basic principles and the framework of organization. And it has worked well. Also, what is interesting and important, I think, because the change has to go through all society, not just the government administration itself. So you really need PPP, public-private partnership. There is plenty of work to everybody. You have to have a good telecom infrastructure, and we think that a good sort of level of electronic banking is also a very good bonus. Supporting legal and fiscal frameworks, clearly important, and interoperable ICT architecture. Let me sort of show you one thing that I think is missing still in our understanding. You have to kind of look at the future. So the traditional government was like a black box or pyramid for that matter. Then we started to talk about good government as opening up that there are documents that you can see. And but with IT, you don't only see the documents, you also see the procedures if you want. So I think that the future of government is more like not only the documents or open data that you can get, but you can see the procedures. And if you see the procedures, you can participate also in the decision making. So this is a kind of future of government, this kind of participatory, non-hierarchical networked organization. And to do that, really very simple change. You need a vision. You need to know where you are. You need to know where you want to go. And the IT is in the project team somewhere, but it is not the central. As a change management, there are legal people because government is based on law. There is a lot of training because you need people to get used to that. And so don't spend all your resources on planning. Find a way to decide and execute. Try to have, and it was also before, two-tier strategy. Quick wins to gain or keep the political support, and foundations for substantive change. And well, try to use also this kind of ICT argument as above the politics. I mean, politicians are always fighting about taxes and social security payments, etc. But try to take this e-government argument above it so that the politicians of different parties would agree. And then you can do it. I mean, it's not only we have done it, it's not only the Singaporeans have done it, it's a lot of countries. I mean, some of them, Singapore, very sort of long road already to that excellence. We very new startup, but I think we've managed to do it. And it doesn't have to be one model. So Singapore is very centralized. If you look at Estonian IT architecture, then it is decentralized. So there can be different models. We don't want to put all the data into one sort of super database or super cloud. We think that it is much more secure if it is left to the different departments themselves. So if you want to look more, just look up estonia.com website or ask me questions. I'm going to be around. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tori. We have a different share idea. Even you are centralized or decentralized, but you have a good management. So both of them very successful. So it's a very good example. For the last, is the host of this section is from Thailand, Dr.sak. He's a CIO, being the CIO of Thailand, EGA. Please share the experience.
Thank you very much. Okay. I won't spend much time because as a host, I would like you to listen more from our guests from 3 countries. Okay. Let me start with an overview of how e-government has been developed in Thailand. Started in 1992 with the introduction of the internet. I remember when I finished my PhD from England and came back to NECTEC. NECTEC is I would say probably the only IT government agency at the time. We did not have MICT at that time, so nobody else doing IT. So naturally the government said, okay, NECTEC, you have to do it. That's why NECTEC has started adopting IT for the government. As you can see here, let me give you a little bit about the policy related matter. We set up the National IT Committee in 1992. This committee was chaired by the Prime Minister. I think the same with Singapore or Korea. You know, the e-government has to be in charge with #1 of the country, the Prime Minister. And we, of course, we copy from Korea, from Singapore, whatsoever. Okay. And in 1995, we set up our first IT policy framework. We call it IT 2000, which is some sort of a framework for Thailand in 10 years from 2000, the year of 2000, that which way we should go. After that, we have 2 more, IT 2010 and IT, currently we have IT 2020, which is the current one. But at the same time, we also develop a national ICT master plan. At the moment, we are using the ICT master plan, the #2. The third one, I think, is being proposed to the cabinet. I think probably this year, by the end of this year, we're going to have the new ICT master plan. And of course, MICT was set up in 2002, around 10 years ago. Now we have the real ministry to be in charge of development of ICT of Thailand. It was 10 years ago. Now before that, as I said, that because we don't have MICT, so NECTEC was doing it. We started a project like SchoolNet. I remember at that time, if you want to get access to the internet in Thailand, if you are staying in Chiang Mai, you have to dial long distance. Imagine you have to pay every minute. Comparing people in Bangkok, it's a local call. You only pay 3 baht per once. Instead of people in Chiang Mai, you have to pay maybe if you use 5 baht per minute, something like that. So NECTEC set up some sort of access point in the Chiang Mai area. So people in Chiang Mai can get access to the internet without having to pay the long distance call. And after that, ISP, follow NECTEC. So at the moment, we don't have the problem of digital divide. I gave you the idea is because the development of IT of Thailand. It's the government who actually have to intervene. You have to do something first. You can't wait for the private sector to do something like this. I don't know about other countries. This is what happened in Thailand. Even right now, some of the projects must come from the government. For example, the government cloud, which I would talk about a little bit later. And when NECTEC proposed the idea of government information network in 1997, it's the first time we would like to centralize government IT. I think I remember because I was involved in that project. When we started to operate the government information network, everybody was already having their own network. You can ask Jantima. She was with the revenue department with their own network, connecting every revenue department office around Thailand. You can ask our permanent secretary. He was with the Ministry of Interior doing the registration thing. Again, Ministry of Interior has their own networks. How about NECTEC at that time? I mean, how you gonna operate a network and you're gonna wait and convince them, oh, come on, we already have a centralized government network, come to use our network. That's what's going to happen. That is our first lesson, that if you come late, you have to have other strategy to work with them. You're not going to ask them, forget your own networks, forget your existing system, come to use our new system. Never happen. That is our first lesson when we started EGA. I will tell you a little bit later, but what is our strategy to dealing with this matter. And during the year 2000, we started government CIO program, which is a good move because it has been continuing until today. And of course, in terms of IT laws, okay, I think we have issued a number of IT related laws, again from NECTEC. As I said, because no one in the government is doing IT, so it's got to be NECTEC, which actually NECTEC was, a mandate of NECTEC is actually R&D. Imagine that. You use the researchers to help on these, IT related matters. Again, some of the laws went through, some didn't. For example, until now, we still haven't had the privacy law. I'm sure that Estonia or Singapore already had this law for some years. Yeah, and another one is the data protection law, which is still under considered by the law-related agencies. We have to wait. And the other project I would like to consider, I would like to tell you is government CA services. Again, the same thing with Estonia. We try to let the government use digital certificate. It's not difficult to issue digital certificates, but the thing is, what kind of application they would use digital certificates for their work. I remember when we issue around maybe 50,000 certificates to them, I think maybe less than 10% using the certificate because they didn't know what to do with that. So that is another lesson we learned. Maybe it's too advanced for them at the time. Maybe it's the application. Maybe it's the awareness of the people how important is digital certificate. And when MICT started in 2003, and we didn't have many people to work because at that time there's a big change in the government. We have, I think, around 3 or 4 ministries. And of course, to transfer people from other ministry to MICT ministry, you have to have some sort of learning curve for the people, to learn their new assignment or something like that. So it wasn't until 2011, okay, and the government decided to set up 2 agencies. One is EGA. And the other one is Electronic Government Development Agency, ETDA. So basically, EGA would help MICT in operating infrastructure for the government, whereas Electronic Government Development Agency, or ETDA, would be in charge of the standards, IT law, security, and so on. And believe it or not, the people from these two agencies are actually transferred from NECTEC. I forgot to tell you, NECTEC at the time was under Ministry of Science and Technology, and we have MICT. So you can see the struggling of the power between these two ministries until they set up EGA and ETDA and move people from NECTEC to MICT. And now we are in, how to say, we can start to do work right away. So you get the whole picture of how e-government in Thailand has been developed so far. So to give you a big picture of the government, e-government in Thailand, from this picture you can see here that we have to have some sort of support from the politicians. Of course, it's very clear from this current government. The Prime Minister is very keen on IT, and our minister is also very good in using IT. In terms of infrastructure, Ministry of ICT is running government information network, the same as the one previously I told you, but with different strategy in working with other agencies who already have their own networks. Now we don't ask them to stop working on their network, but we try to connect with them, make sure that these networks can be, working together. I give you one example that we work with the Minister of Interior. They are hosting the citizen database. As Ivar said, that Thailand, every person has a smart card, ID card. Now the thing is how to utilize these databases. If you have time, if you go to ITU upstairs, please go to the e-government pavilion. You will see that there's a kiosk, and you can use, for Thai people, you can use your smart card, ID card, to check your information, and it's online. And if you don't have the PIN number, you can ask the PIN number from them too. It's just like an ATM card with a PIN number. You can also use your fingerprint to identify yourself too. So the thing is that we have to work with certain departments. For example, the Department of Registration. Of course, Revenue Department is also another big player in, with a big database. So in terms of infrastructure, what EGA is trying to do is that instead of tell the government, okay, ICT would do everything, no. We only can centralize certain things, but not everything. Like James and Ivar said, okay. For example, the Revenue Department, we leave them alone. Okay, you do it alone, but make sure that we can, work with them. We can exchange information from the Revenue Department database. We can exchange information from the Ministry of Interior, and so on, without asking them to, come to use the centralized infrastructure. The other one is the back office. Again, a classic problem of everyone has their own back office, but cannot actually work or talk to each other. One of the mandates of EGA is to set up standards so that they can, send information across ministry, across departments. And of course, the security and policy thing is in charge by EGDA. And I think they are doing well in trying to set up regulation or standard regarding doing the transaction across the government and across the private sector too. And of course we have government cloud, which we just started 2 years ago, and it gets very well reception from agencies. Yeah. Again, we don't force them to come to use our cloud. Okay, but we try to make them realize that eventually your data center would expire. You would have to procure a new one. Why not come to use our G Cloud without having to do anything? Because it's free of charge. This is one of our strategy. And at the moment, I think there are more than 100 agencies using our G Cloud. Of course, we have to make them believe, we have to convince them, and we have to make sure that our system are okay. We have to have some sort of SLA between EGA and the agencies. Otherwise, they won't come to use our G Cloud. Okay, so you get the whole picture that why EGA comes to the picture when everybody already having everything. So our strategy is that what would be the best positioning of EGA? And we figure that we would be PMO, Project Management Office. We're going to talk to government agency, get their requirements, get their feedback, and at the same time we work with the vendors, the cloud providers, the network providers, the software providers, and so on, and make sure that the services from this provider are met by the standard required by the government agency. So PMO is the best positioning of EGA in trying to make e-government in Thailand go ahead. Okay? And at the same time, we also have some sort of working group, some sort of R&D too, because otherwise Thailand won't have anything by ourselves. Otherwise, we can just buy things from other countries. So we set up some sort of working group, some sort of think tank to help us that what should be the best technology for Thailand and so on. So you get the picture now there what EGA is trying to do. This is the current vision, actually the current policy driven by the current minister. We call it Smart Thailand. And we have smart networks, which is the infrastructure from, we call it SuperGIN, Government Information Network, Smart Cloud, which I already told you. And at the same time, we propose, we have the smart government. Smart card is the key because, as I said, that the smart card, which every Thai person has, would be the access thing to do any government transaction. Smart City also another project piloted at Nakhon Nayok, which once our permanent secretary was doing this project. So he knows that he wants to extend this project to other provinces in Thailand too. And of course we have smart business, which ETA would be in charge of, and of course smart people. Okay, so you get the whole thing, you get the whole idea of Smart Thailand. Now, this is the roadmap that we plan to go. This is adopted from Gartner model. Okay, at the moment, Thailand is in the stage of join-up government. We would like to go to open government in next year, and of course go to smart government eventually. So in order to go there, we have developed some sort of e-government readiness framework. The thing is, in Thailand, we have people like champions, agencies like Revenue Department, Ministry of Interior, or Ministry of Transportation, where you can pay tax for your car online from your mobile phone, which is okay. But how about other agencies? Maybe 60 or 70% of the agencies, they are not well equipped with these agencies. So we have to have the framework to help them to assess themselves where they are now, where they should do in the next 2 or 5 years. And we have developed this framework. We are actually doing the ranking for each department. And tomorrow I have a keynote, or I think the last session at the academic workshop. I would be talking more about this readiness framework. And we believe that with this framework, each department should be able to know what they should do in the next 2 or 3 years. The budget bureau should be able to give the budget according to each department need, not treat everyone the same. And of course, eventually, the government should be able to know that which is what area they should be helping agency, which area they should make sure that they understand. So this is how Thailand is going to push our e-government to what we expect to be, which is open and smart government. Thank you very much.
So after all of you, first of all, I have to thank you everyone who sit in the, until now, nobody moved. Thank you. So it means our speaker is very well shared the experience. And you can see all the, we have the same objective. Go to the e-government, go to have an e-service, very good service to all the citizens. Not only saving the costing, but if more the people convenience. So this is shared experience you can get, and if you want to develop your own agency, you can ask 4 of them. Just like now, I give you a question, if you have some question I want to ask our speaker, please. Please, come. So we can share more.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself first.
Okay, my name is Sui from the National University of Singapore. Thank you, the list of panelists, a wonderful share of wisdom. Since Dr. Sak just finished your presentation, I give you some time to rest and get over your breath. And since the 3 of them, I was watching them whether they fall asleep. The good news, they didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask questions for each of them so that they will warm you up and then you can talk again. Right. James, my question to James is that almost all of them talk about the e-identity. And earlier, you did not cover that part. So maybe later on, when Chair Lady allows you to talk, I would like to hear from you, what is the Singapore approach on the e-identity and how far we go and so on. And for Mr. Ivar, Tallo is a wonderful, interesting, very fresh way of approaching it, obviously different from Singapore. I'd like to know how your country make decision in terms of selecting the right project to do, because you emphasize on the open method of planning, and therefore it's quite open, quite flexible in the appearance. So how do you make those decisions? And once you make those decisions, how do you get different functional ministry to work as a team? Because, you know, it seems to be not centrally controlled. I may be wrong. Now, in order to keep the 2 of them on their toes, and because Mr. William Edward is independent now, you know, you're not with the British government, and I want you to look at the 2 different approaches and have your own comment. And if you don't want to hurt them, you're welcome to ask questions for the 2. Okay? So that ends my request. Thank you.
Thank you. So, James.
Can I just add one more question to Dr. Sak? Thank you for your very detailed plan, vision about Thailand. I've been here 1.5 months now, and in Bangkok, I'm very satisfied in terms of the internet use or infrastructures. But how about the province, local government? I think most of them is living in the far from Bangkok. So what is your strategy to make this happen together with Bangkok? Okay, thank you.
Let me answer your question first. I mentioned the Smart Province project, and we actually doing this project as a pilot project at Nakhon Nayok. And the main purpose of this project is that we would like to know if we could provide ICT infrastructure to every village in that province, which I think is around 400 something villages. And then we would like to know that what actually is, what are the requirements of people in that area? What kind of services from the government? Of course, we're going to provide internet access to every village. How about the applications? How about the services? How about information, what kind of information people in Nakhon Nayok would like to, to share, would like to use to make their life easier or better or something like that. So maybe next month, next year, I think there should be some sort of the final result from our pilot project. Or you can go to MICT website to see what are the results. Mind you, the current permanent secretary was actually the one who proposed this project when he was the governor of Nakhon Nayok. So it's very interesting to see how he would scale up this project to other provinces.
Okay, actually, before I was the one who asked the first question. When Dr.sak come back, I say, your G-Cloud free, no money. Can I use it? Amazing. Free, of course they will come, right? Why would they don't come? Wonderful to have free services nowadays, unheard of. Okay, the question was e-identity. Actually, Singapore, many years ago, I think 20 years ago, we also tried to do a lot of bold things like smart chip, NTUC, the union, the million members, we put smart chip, and we are ahead of our time. No usage, no killer app. So actually we spend a lot of money for nothing. So I think we sober up and become more practical. So in Singapore, well, unlike some Western country, we are okay with identity card, so it wasn't such a bad thing. So actually every Singapore citizen do have a identity card. So the number is unique. And so on the E side of the house, actually we use it, we call it SingPass. It's a very simple system, unique identity and a simple password. But the way we implement it is the whole of government, as long as you use that, you can get in. And because this is a unique number, we can look into single sign-on, which is what we are working on now. So just need to sign on once, and you can use all from government agencies, wherever you are, is seamless. And of course, we do come out with a second factor for those more sensitive transactions. So it's been working pretty well, actually. I think this is very dynamic, but having learned our lesson, I think we will move along. What we maybe have to look a bit more now is a digital signature, which will open up several new opportunities. So very practical, don't overspend, and when the time is ripe, we will just invest, yeah.
Okay. If I may, I just add to something, to this digital identity thing. I mean, this is something that lots of countries are grappling with. Next week, I'm going to be in a CIO forum of Germany, and that is already a question asked from me, saying that, okay, they started to introduce also ID card, and now they are saying, okay, but what do we do with it exactly? And if I remember, if I look back, I mean, ID card introduction in Estonia was the first where political parties had different position, exactly because it was quite an expensive sort of outlay. But what was, I mean, it is kind of the chicken and egg question. If you don't have it, then you can't develop the services. If you have it, you will be accused of not having the services because people are initially not using them. So, I mean, it is kind of, you have to have courage as a government actually to do this step. But when you do it, the benefits are enormous because if you have this universal card for everybody, this one single universal identity. Because what I see around the world where I'm going to give advice or talk, I see that all different government agencies and countries develop their own cards or their own sort of identity. And then they start to say, if that is working, then they try to spread it in the government. And then they have all kind of infightings. I mean, I don't know why they go that way and not choose to do this one universal card. But anyway, coming to the other question of how to, what is the right method of choosing the projects and who to work with. Look, I think the answer is really in what I said in my presentation also, that there are so many things to do. And so you don't have to be sort of, to play God and say this has to be first and this has to be second and this has to be 31st. What you do is really look where the opportunities are. I used to teach at the university public policy. When I was just teaching it, I was telling my students that, well, it is kind of a little bit art, but mainly it's a technique. I mean, you have to do it precisely, measure and all this. But then I went through the government and policy making. And now I say to people that, you know, policy making is more like art of modeling through. You just have to look for the less resistance. And so when you see in government that there are some more enthusiastic ministries with their own ideas, support them, and then the rest will follow. I mean, the open method of planning, really, how we introduce this kind of X-road, this interoperability architecture for Estonian government, was that we had initially the group of ministries, and quite shamelessly we took the ministers who were friends, or in friendly terms also personally. So because we knew that there are going to be just this kind of political, administrative, all kind of problems, not technology problems. When they got it working and were able to show the benefits, some others became interested. Initially, we actually, for example, we thought that it would be good to invite also police, and police didn't want to have anything to do with us. As they said, well, no, not for us. I mean, after a year and a half, they started to scratch their head and said, well, actually, it's quite interesting. Can we also join? Of course you can. I mean, and then if you have like 50–60% of the government agencies already joining in, then you can force the standard and say, okay, by the end of next year, everybody has to do it. So you have to break the kind of resistance piece by piece, if I may say so. That's the secret.
Right. I don't feel like I can give a view on what these gentlemen have said here. Oh, maybe I will. Let me add a couple of things in. So let me pick up on Ivar's point here. I agree with you know, fundamentally with the philosophy that you have to build consensus, and that you have to have quick wins, and that you have to look for islands of support, because in government, decisions get made in retrospect. You know, you never, seldom, I would say, have a point, unless you have some kind of cataclysmic event. You seldom have a point at which people make the hard decisions. So what you've got to do is architect an environment that moves you in the direction that you want to do. And you go, and I think that's what you're saying. And I would agree with that. And the processes in the standards that I talked about, that's the processes do that. What I'd say two things on top of that. One is that I actually do believe that you need to have a roadmap that says this is where we're going to get to. So typically, let's say 4 years, we're going to be here. It's a goal. We might not achieve that goal, but you shouldn't be starting out to fail. And in that roadmap, then at least you should be able to map the high-level components of that, so that you can order the things that you're going to do. Because it's no use issuing your identity cards to people if you don't have the infrastructure to sweat that asset. So that's what I mean by that. The other thing that I would add to it is that I think that in order to be successful, you do need to bring some rigor to delivery. And governments are, you know, so, well, I don't want to be, I don't want in any way to be critical here, because it's where I've come from, and I learned my lessons inside the government. But it's easy for people inside government to make sweeping policies. It's very difficult then for the poor people who have to implement those. So and out of that, I would say that, once you decide to do something, what am I going to do today, tomorrow, the day after, the immediate future? Then you need detail around that. You need to, the same rigor around that you would expect the people who are coming in after us to do in their businesses. So having been through the pain and suffering of delivering direct gov in the UK, an experience I would love to go through again, only because I know what to do next time. But having been through it the first time, when it was all a bit of a journey, lessons around delivery. So very, very important to deliver. The other thing on identity, which I'll pick up on, is it's an intensely political topic, identity. And as an example of that, and so in my travels around the world, then the approach to identity, the acceptance of identity as a concept varies tremendously. So, and I'll tell you a funny story, actually. I think this is true. I know you never know, do you? But it was told to me by country CIO of a northern European country. I won't say which one it is. And it's one of the few, I think it's probably one of the few countries in the world where you can legally change your sex. So if you're born a man, you want to be a woman, or you're born a woman, you want to be a man, you can legally do that in this country. And it's absolutely, everything is in your, as far as the world is concerned, you've now changed your sex legally. No problem at all. Except that at birth, everybody gets a unique identifier, and somebody decided right at the very beginning that, and I'm not sure which way round this is, but for example, all the men should have an odd number and all the women should have an even number, and you can't change that because you only, that's a one-time identifier. So, you probably wouldn't have foreseen that in the roadmap at the time, but anyway. But in the UK, we don't have a single identifier, and it's worse than that. We have a situation where certainly the closest thing we have to that is a national insurance number, and this is your health number and your benefits number. The problem with that is, in times gone by, if you said I've lost my card, because when it started, there was no computerization, so you got issued a card, and if you said I've lost it, they gave you another one with a different number. So people exist in the system more than once. And the government decided that really we should solve this problem, and we should have a single identifier for the whole of government, for the state, for each individual. And of course a massive project started around that, because you're starting with this enormous legacy, 60 million people with, 70 million unique identifiers out there. And you had to bring all of these things together from different parts of government. And so it became a political football. And it became a stick with which the then opposition could beat the government, because it was expensive and there were lots of civil liberty objections to it. So it was a great thing for an opposition party. The then government that started that project lost the election. The current government came in on a platform of we need to dramatically cut public spending. It had been, criticising this project since it started. So the first thing it did was stop it. So because all the money that had been spent went down the toilet, and no doubt this will come back on the agenda at some point in the future. But I think the message there is that it's very political and it depends on the country. So what might be easy to do in Singapore, well, easy is a relative word, isn't it? But what might be possible at Singapore and effective and in Estonia is not necessarily the case, even in what I would like to think is a right-minded country as well. And the UK's approach to single identity sign-on in government has been to create something called the government gateway, which has been used in other countries. And that enables you to have a single ID which you can use with different agencies, except that the agency, I mean, I won't go into it, it's very complicated. It's not ideal, but it's effective. It means if I go to one agency and I create an account, actually I don't create an account with that agency, I create it with a central function called the gateway. When I go to the next agency, it will recognize me. So it's kind of a smoke and mirrors way of giving you the same thing. And it works well. And there's one thing in there that I'm sure that happens elsewhere, which is I think it was a very smart thing to do at the beginning. And that is that identity is verified on tiers. So you have to verify your identity. The gateway has to learn who you are, and it has to go through a number of proofs. So I might be asked, if I'm doing tax, I might be asked for the last 2 totals on my VAT statement. If I'm applying for a driving license, I won't be asked that question, I might be asked another question. But here's the important point here, and it is that the gateway has several tiers of authentication. And if I just go in to renew my driving license or to pay my road fund license, I have to pay every 12 months tax on my car, the gateway just trusts it's me. Because who on earth is going to come along and pay the government money if they don't have to? If I want to get sensitive information out of the government, it will say, no, I have to have other proof. And what it lets you do is it lets you create, if your first transaction is a low-level transaction, it lets you create that account. If you want to do a high-level transaction later on in a different agency, it's smart enough to say, I need to go through another process of proof with this person. So, there are 2 things there. One is, actually, you can have single sign-on if you don't join up government and you don't have a single identity card. And the other thing is that I think it's important not to set the barrier to doing that at the top, but to say what's the easiest way we can make that happen. So that's my contribution. Thank you for the question.
So thank you very much for our speaker and all our member in this room. We still have the other section, so we should finish our section now, and we have a little break and come back. Have to sure everyone come back to the other section about lesson learned from the best practice of the business CIO. Yeah, thank you very much. We give a hand to all my speakers.